the first thing the guests noticed was the sound. A low, thunderous chopping that rolled across the sky and made people pause mid-conversation. Hundreds of well-dressed strangers in silk dresses and pressed tuxedos slowly lifted their heads toward the sun. Up there, hovering above the white wedding tents, was a helicopter. For a moment, no one panicked. In fact, a few people actually clapped. Someone laughed and said it must be part of the show. Some grand surprise the bride's family had planned. Phones came out. Guests pointed upward with excited smiles. From where I sat inside the cockpit, I could see everything clearly. The flower arch, the violin players, the towering wedding cake was waiting beside the dance floor, and directly beneath us, a crowd of people celebrating on land that didn't belong to them. What they didn't know, what none of them could possibly imagine, was that the tank behind me wasn't filled with water or confetti. It was filled with manure, thousands of pounds of it. Now, before you think I completely lost my mind, you need to understand something. Karen started this, and what she did to my land first. I spent my entire life working this land. My grandfather bought the first stretch of it decades ago, back when this part of the county was nothing but open fields, dirt roads, and the quiet rhythm of farm life. My father grew up here, so did I. Every fence post, every barn beam, every acre of soil carries a piece of our family's history. Farming isn't just a job to me. It's mornings that start before the sun rises, the smell of fresh earth after rain, and the kind of hard work that settles deep in your bones. For most of my life, the only neighbors I had were other farmers scattered miles apart. Then, a few years ago, everything started changing. Bulldozers showed up. Fields were carved into neat little rectangles. Before long, a massive suburban development appeared right along the edge of my property. Perfect rows of identical houses, trimmed lawns, shiny SUVs in every driveway. And with it came something I had never dealt with before in HOA. At first, we kept our distance. They stayed in their neighborhood, and I stayed on my farm. But it didn't take long before their board started acting like the rules of their little community somehow applied to everything around them, too. It started on an ordinary afternoon when I pulled my truck up to the front gate and saw a woman standing there like she owned the place. Arms crossed, chin tilted up, the kind of posture that practically announces trouble before a single word is spoken. She introduced herself as Karen, president of the Homeowners Association from the new development next door. Her voice had that sharp, polished confidence people use when they're used to getting their way. Without much small talk, she gestured toward my open field and explained that her daughter was getting married soon. According to her, my property would make the perfect rustic wedding venue. She talked about flower arches, elegant tents, and sunset photos like the whole thing was already planned. The strange part was that she never actually asked, not once. Every sentence sounded less like a request and more like a decision that had already been made. I told her calmly that I'd think about it, mostly because I didn't feel like arguing right there in the driveway. She smiled in that tight, satisfied way people do when they believe they've already won. But the next day she came back, demanding an answer. When I told her no, her expression hardened instantly. Then she said something that made it clear exactly who I was dealing with. We're using that field whether you like it or not. I figured after that conversation, she'd cool off and move on. Most people do when they realize they've pushed too far. Karen wasn't most people. 2 days later, I drove back from town and nearly slammed the brakes when I saw a delivery truck parked halfway in my field. Workers were unloading long white poles and bundles of fabric. At first, I thought they had the wrong address. Then I saw the tent taking shape right there on my grass. By the end of the afternoon, more trucks showed up. Decorators walked around measuring distances like the place belonged to them. Someone started stacking folding chairs in neat rows. It didn't stop there. Over the next few days, the field slowly transformed. Strings of lights appeared between temporary posts. A wooden arch was assembled near the center of the clearing. I posted bright red signs along the fence line that read, "Private property. No tiers passing." I mounted cameras where anyone entering the field could see them blinking. And twice I confronted Karen directly, telling her she needed to stop before this went too far. Each time, she waved it off like I was some stubborn inconvenience standing in the way of her plans. She even said the HOA board had already approved the venue. That was the moment something clicked in my mind. Karen didn't think she might get away with this. She truly believed no one could stop her. and that's when I started thinking differently about the situation. That night, I sat alone in the barn, going over the situation in my head. Karen and her little HOA circus thought they had already won. They were treating my land like it was just another empty lot waiting to serve their plans. What they didn't know was that the field they were decorating wasn't just a pretty open space. It was scheduled for fertilizing. Every year around this time, I bring in a helicopter crew to spread manure across the acreage. It's efficient, fast, and the crops need it. The contract had already been signed weeks earlier. Originally, I planned to push the date back because of all the chaos Karen had started. I figured it would be easier than dealing with the fallout, but the more I thought about her attitude, the way she laughed off my warnings and acted as if my property belonged to her neighborhood, the more that idea started to bother me. Why should I change my schedule for someone who ignored every boundary I set? So instead of canceling, I adjusted the timing. The helicopter would arrive right when the ceremony was supposed to begin. I could already picture it. Guests in polished shoes and designer suits. Soft violin music floats across the field, champagne glasses clinking under elegant white tents. Then the slow thunder of rotor blades rolling in from the horizon. My land, my schedule, my sky, and very soon everyone down there would understand that. The wedding day arrived exactly the way Karen imagined it would. By mid-afternoon, the narrow road leading to my property was packed with shiny cars. Guests stepped out in polished shoes and colorful dresses, carefully making their way across the field that had somehow become their celebration space. White tents stretched across the grass, tables covered with linen and crystal glasses sparkling in the sunlight. Someone had even set up a small orchestra near the flower arch where the ceremony would take place. From the air, the whole thing looked like a picture from a magazine. People laughed, servers carried trays of champagne, and the bride stood near the aisle glowing with excitement. Then the sound started. At first, it was faint, just a distant vibration rolling across the sky. A few guests shaded their eyes and pointed upward. When the helicopter came into view, cheers broke out across the crowd. Some people clapped, assuming it was some extravagant wedding surprise. Phones lifted into the air, recording what they thought was a dramatic entrance. Down below, Karen stood proudly near the front rows, smiling like everything was unfolding exactly as planned. The first mist drifted down lightly across the far edge of the field. A few guests sniffed the air with puzzled expressions. Then the helicopter moved closer. With one signal, the tank released. Thick streams poured downward like a brown storm breaking open in the sky. Screams exploded across the ceremony. Guests slipped in the muck as they tried to run. The orchestra dropped their instruments and scattered. The towering wedding cake collapsed sideways into the mud. The bride shrieked in horror while clutching her ruined dress. And right in the middle of it all stood Karen, frozen, completely drenched from head to toe. From above, I watched the chaos unfold. Finally, the message had landed. Karen didn't take the humiliation quietly. The very next morning, she was already threatening lawsuits, shouting about damages, reputation, and how I had destroyed her daughter's wedding. According to her, I had planned the whole thing just to embarrass her family. But when the case finally reached court, the story started looking very different. My lawyer calmly laid out the timeline. The fertilization schedule had been booked weeks in advance. The helicopter contract was signed long before Karen ever stepped onto my property. Then came the camera footage clear recordings showing Karen, decorators, and dozens of guests ignoring the private property signs while setting up the wedding anyway. The judge barely needed a moment to think. The case was dismissed. Karen was fined for trespassing and ordered to pay cleanup costs. After that day, her confidence vanished, and she never stepped near my gate again. So that's how one entitled HOA wedding turned into the messiest ceremony this county has probably ever seen. Now I'm curious what you think. Did Karen get exactly what she deserved, or did I take things too far? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more HOA stories.